These are the top 5 mistakes new carnivores make and how to avoid them. I'm Jenny, I've been carnivore for 2 years and I've made plenty of mistakes, especially in the beginning of this lifestyle. So let's let something good come from those mistakes and hopefully help you avoid the worst of them. Mistake number 1, not giving carnivore enough time. You can't do carnivore for 2 days and then say it doesn't work for you. In order to see real results, you need to give carnivore a minimum of 30 to 90 days, and honestly, I think 90 is the true minimum. The first couple of weeks can be really tough because of the keto flu, which is just a fancy way of saying carb withdrawal. You don't know how many people I talk to that are like, oh, I tried carnivore, I did it for like 2 or 3 days, I had a ton of fatigue, I had endless diarrhea, so I just quit. Well, no crap, you didn't feel good. You were going through withdrawals. You have to make it through that before it gets easier. And I will say, not everybody gets the keto flu, but if you want to avoid it or mitigate the worst of its symptoms, you need to make sure you have some electrolytes on hand. I used raw unflavored element packets in the beginning of carnivore and they were a godsend. Now, I'm not going to say that they made me feel 100% better because they definitely did not. But they took the edge off the very worst of my keto flu symptoms and helped get me through the day. Right now, Element is offering my viewers a free sample pack with any order, so you can pick up a box or 2 of the raw unflavored before you start carnivore is what I advise, so that they are around if you need them, and then you can get that free sample pack. Head to the link in the description. It is drinkelement.com/Jenny Mitich. That's DRINKLMNT.com/Jenny Mitich and get your free sample pack with any order today. So you can avoid mistake number 1 by first committing to carnivore for 30 to 90 days, and then make sure you have some electrolytes on hand to deal with the worst of any keto flu symptoms that you encounter. Mistake number 2 is being inconsistent. You can't do carnivore during the week and then eat a standard American diet on the weekends and expect to see any kind of results. In that case, you're not even eating carnivore. I know it can be hard in the beginning to stick with it, but just being consistent for a long enough period of time is half the battle. Eventually, it's going to become a lot easier to eat this way. You will break your sugar addiction, carbs will no longer have power over you, and you'll find that it becomes second nature to eat this way because you're going to be feeling really good. But in the beginning, a lot of this is mental. You just have to make up your mind that you are going to do carnivore for 30 to 90 days, you're going to be consistent with it and strict with it. No cheat meals, no alcohol, no anything that isn't carnivore for at least the first 30 days so you can figure out if this lifestyle is going to work for you. Inconsistency on carnivore is one of those mistakes I see the most, and it can really hinder your goals on carnivore. Mistake number 3 is overcomplicating it. I get so many comments about, oh, coffee isn't carnivore, or dairy isn't carnivore, or you can't use spices and seasoning on carnivore. I also get tons of comments about what you can and cannot eat. And I'm here to tell you that if you want to drink coffee on carnivore, you totally can. Some people include dairy in their version of carnivore, and plenty of carnivores use seasonings and spices on their meat. Carnivore really isn't complicated. Just eat meat, seafood, eggs, and butter. Some people, like I said, can include dairy. A sprinkle of garlic powder or a cup of coffee isn't going to be the end of the world. And I can tell you as a long-term carnivore, this is not something that I worry about. Now, there are people that are extremely sensitive and they do need to pay attention to any kind of plant material in their diet. You'll know you're one of those people if you have like an extremely serious medical condition, like any kind of autoimmune issues, or if you just can't keep food down, extreme food allergies, hardcore skin issues, things like that. Your system is incredibly sensitive. So for you, I would say cut all of the plant material out for at least 30 days, and then start reintroducing one item at a time for a couple of days to see if you have a reaction to it. If you don't have a reaction to it, then you very well could include it in your version of the carnivore diet. But for the vast majority of people that are going to be starting carnivore, they're coming to lose some weight, improve their metabolic health, reduce inflammation, things like that. And a cup of coffee or using some garlic powder on their meat really isn't going to be that big of a deal. But you may have reactions that you don't even realize. So you could do the same thing. Cut all of those things for 30 days or cut most of those things and then reintroduce them and see how it goes. The key is to make this a lifestyle that you can live for the long term. If you decide that you really enjoy the carnivore diet, you need to make it your own. I know of some long-term carnivores that use tomato sauce on some things. I know of plenty of long-term carnivores that use sugar substitutes to make carnivore desserts, and it works for them. You're going to figure out what works for you as time goes on, as you do a little bit of experimentation, but for the time being, don't overcomplicate it. Stick with meat, seafood, eggs, and butter, and maybe a little bit of dairy, and you'll be good to go. Mistake number 4 is not eating enough food. Something that changes drastically when you start carnivore is your appetite. You're going to find that you're no longer as hungry as you used to be. And one of the reasons for that is you're no longer on a glucose roller coaster. When you're not consuming carbs, your blood glucose is not going to spike and dip as drastically as it does when you are consuming them. But for some people, their appetite completely tanks. You have no idea how many people I talk to that start carnivore, and then within a couple of weeks, they're only consuming 500, 800, 1,000 calories per day. And that is nowhere near enough food for a full-grown adult, let alone a kid. So if you're only consuming that much food, you really, really, really need to up the caloric intake. Now, I realize calories are super complicated. It's very hard to quantify the true amount of calories in your food, and also a calorie is not a calorie. A calorie from a Snickers bar is not going to be the same as a calorie from a ribeye steak. Food quality and nutrient density play a huge part in how your body actually uses the fuel that you provide it. But calories are something that most people understand, so I'm going to give you a minimum. I think you should be eating a minimum of 1,600 to 1,800 calories per day on a carnivore diet. Aim for at least 2 meals per day and try not to snack in between. In the beginning, if you do some carnivore snacks in between meals, I don't think that's a big deal, but I really want you to start learning your true hunger cues, and I really want you to focus on eating large meals and then not eating in between. Mistake number 5 is not eating enough fat. There's a very common misconception out there that the carnivore diet is a high protein diet, and it is not in most cases. Carnivore is typically a high fat, moderate protein style of eating. Now, if you stop consuming carbs, your only other fuel source is fat. Proteins are building blocks. They're gonna help you with the structure of your body, your internal organs, building muscle and things like that, but they're not going to be fueling you. They're not the gasoline for the vehicle. Fat is the gasoline for your car. It's the fuel. If you stop consuming carbs, you're going to need to be upping the fat so that you have enough energy. Lots of people start carnivore and they don't eat enough fat, or they're eating really lean cuts of meat, and they'll start feeling crappy really quickly. I don't find it remotely difficult to eat high fat on carnivore. If you're eating fattier cuts of meat, so 80-20 ground beef, ribeyes, there's lots of fatty fish out there, salmon, sardines, pork can be very fatty, and you can always add extra fat into the meat. You can add butter, you can cook everything in bacon grease, and make sure you're adding those fats to your tracking if you're tracking your food. The final thing I want you to understand about fat is when you're eating the correct fats, so animal fats, you're not going to get fat by eating fat. When you stop consuming carbohydrates and you're only consuming animal fats and animal proteins, man, you are going to see a drastic reduction in your blood glucose levels, your fasting insulin, your triglycerides. You're going to be seeing a reduction in a lot of weight in the beginning that is water weight. A lot of that is because of the carbohydrates that you're eating, extra inflammation. That's going to go down. And you're going to start to see that you will start releasing those fat stores, even consuming a very, very high fat diet. I eat, gosh, I don't know, 150 to 200 grams of fat per day, and I've lost 50 pounds on carnivore. So I need you to get away from that idea that fat is what's making you fat. Switch it. Carbohydrates are what's making you fat. So that's my public service announcement of the day. If you are starting the carnivore diet or doing some research about it, I'm going to put a playlist right here of all my beginner carnivore videos. I also have a ton of new content coming out about this topic, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like some carnivore gear, such as this More Meat, Less Plants shirt, head over to jennymitich.com and use the code RIBEYE15 to get 15% off your order. If you have any questions, don't think they're stupid or that, maybe I've heard them a million times. It's totally okay. Please leave them in the comment section below. I am here to help you. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.